Hi, in this video, we will learn about histology of the tongue. Before we learn the histology of the tongue, let's learn a little bit about its gross anatomy. Tongue is a conical muscular organ situated partly in the oral cavity and partly in the pharyngeal cavity. It has got a tip which is directed towards the incisors, a base or posterior surface directed towards the oropharynx. It has got a dorsal surface directed towards the palate and a ventral surface which is directed towards the floor of the mouth. This is the diagrammatic representation of the dorsal surface of the tongue. A V-shaped groove called as sulcus terminalis divides the tongue into two parts, an anterior oral or presulcal part and a posterior pharyngeal or postsulcal part. The presulcal part has lingual papillae, whereas the postsulcal part has lingual tonsils. The ventral surface of the tongue is smooth. With this background, let's learn the histology of the tongue now. This is the sagittal section of the tongue. This is the tip of the tongue. This is the dorsal surface and this is the ventral surface. Between the dorsal surface and the ventral surface, we have the main substance of the tongue made up of skeletal muscles covered by mucous membrane. If we enlarge the view, we can see that these muscles, they are arranged in three different planes. Characteristically, each of these planes will be perpendicular to the other two planes. The mucosa, which covers the dorsal surface of the tongue, is always thicker than the mucosa covering the ventral surface. Both the dorsal surface and the ventral surface is covered by stratified squamous epithelium. Once you see stratified squamous epithelium in any given slide, you should consider the possibility of the tissue or an organ which is concerned with either protection or which is exposed to wear and tear. So, in human body, we can think of skin, oral cavity, structures within the oral cavity, esophagus, and then the anal canal. Even though both dorsal mucosa and ventral mucosa are covered by stratified squamous epithelium, the dorsal mucosa of the tongue in its anterior part is keratinized, whereas in its posterior part it is non-keratinized. Let's appreciate the features of the dorsal mucosa. Apart from the thickness, the other difference in dorsal and ventral mucosa is the ventral mucosa is smooth, free from any projections, whereas the dorsal mucosa has surface projections which are referred to as lingual papillae. Lingual papillae are of four types: filiform, fungiform, circumvallate and foliate. In this section, we can see only filiform papillae. So let's discuss the structure of filiform papillae in detail. These are the filiform papillae. These are the most numerous of the four types of lingual papillae. They are arranged parallel to the V-shaped sulcus terminalis anteriorly, and as we reach the tip of the tongue, they are almost situated transversely across the dorsal surface. Filiform papillae are called so because they are thin and thread-like. These are small conical shaped projections that cover almost the entire mucosa of the dorsal surface. Filiform papilla are identified by the direction of their tip. The tip of each of these filiform papilla is bent posteriorly, and each of these papilla are covered by stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Taste buds are characteristically absent in these papilla. The function of filiform papillae is to increase the friction between the tongue and the foot, and they also help in the movement of food particles. This is regarding the structure of filiform papilla. Now, as I mentioned, in this slide, we cannot appreciate the fungiform papilla or any other type of papilla. So let's see another slide to understand the structure of fungiform papilla. This is another slide of tongue. We can appreciate the dorsal mucosa and the underlying muscular layer. If we enlarge in this field, we can see both fungiform and filiform papillae. Now, these fungiform papillae are present along the lateral margins of the tongue and are also scattered among the filiform papillae. Now, how do we differentiate fungiform and filiform papillae? The fungiform papillae are called so because they typically look like mushroom. These are slightly larger than the filiform papillae. They are lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. We can see the filiform papillae to the right hand side, which is keratinized, whereas the fungiform papillae is non-keratinized. The connective tissue core within the papilla is slightly larger in case of fungiform papilla compared to the filiform papilla, and we can see lot of blood vessels within the core of the connective tissue of the fungiform papillae. All these features, absence of keratinization, plenty of blood vessels in the connective tissue, and a thinned out stratified squamous epithelium, all these give the fungiform papillae characteristic bright red appearance. So, when we see these fungiform papillae in the living, they appear as red dots on the dorsal surface of the tongue in between the filiform papillae. This is regarding the structure of the dorsal surface of the tongue, which shows lingual papillae. So, in order to summarize, tongue is a muscular organ which is covered on both the sides, that is the dorsal surface and the ventral surface, by a stratified squamous epithelium. The ventral surface, the stratified squamous epithelium is thin compared to the dorsal surface. The mucosa of the dorsal surface is comparatively thicker than the mucosa of the ventral surface, and the dorsal mucosa also shows projections called as lingual papillae. Lingual papillae are of 4 types: filiform, the most numerous, fungiform, circumvallate, and foliate. Filiform papillae are characteristically identified by their conical shape and their tip bent backwards. They have a thin connective tissue core and usually are lined by stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Fungiform papillae are different from filiform papillae in being round shaped or mushroom shaped. They have a larger connective tissue core which is highly vascular, and they are characteristically lined by epithelium which is stratified squamous non-keratinized. The main substance of the tongue is made up of skeletal muscles which are arranged in 3 interweaving planes. This is regarding the microstructure or histology of the tongue. In the next video, we will learn about the histology of the circumvallate papilla. If you like this video, please leave a like, post your doubts in the comment section, share and subscribe. Thank you.